Chernobyl in Ohio. That's what people are saying. It's trending right now. You saw the mushroom cloud in the thumbnail. It looks bad. People say their chickens are dying, fish are washing up. That's legitimate, real news. But the New York Times just published a story about it, and they kind of say everything's really not that bad. So what's the truth? That's what I wanted to figure out. So I'm just going to show you what's out there. I'll show you what's out there. I'll show you exhibit number 1. This is somebody who is freaked out, who says they know what they're talking about, and it's going to be really bad based on reports on the ground. So this Zoomer has something to say about it. I'll play that for you. This is going around. Okay, it's got over 1 million views right now.
I see so many people talking about the train derailment at East Palestine, Ohio. And all I'm going to ask is that if you do this, you get your facts right. I literally grew up right down the road from East Palestine. My old childhood best friend lives in the fucking town. My current best friend literally lives right next to the town. It is so much worse than what the media is telling any of us. I'm getting reports from people that are down there right now that they're literally seeing schools of fish floating down streams, rivers, fucking dead. I got a video from my friend, okay? And she's like walking, dude. It's all fucking dead. All fucking dead. And on the top of the water is a really pretty chemical rainbow sheen. The chemicals are in the fucking water and they're lying to the rest of the country saying they're not. The water's been contaminated. The soil's been contaminated. The fucking air is contaminated. You literally are about to see some of the worst fucking health side effects coming out of people in that town. It's not even funny. And y'all want to know something even more fucked up? The restaurant that I work at in a whole different state had to donate food to them because we had people from the churches calling to tell us that Red Cross never fucking came, FEMA never fucking came, the environmental conservationists still have yet to fucking come, and nobody's fucking helping them. Meaning all of the fucking firefighters that were working get no food, have nothing to help them, nothing. Okay, all the people that were displaced have no food, water, a place to stay, none of that shit. It is so much worse than what they're telling you, and TikTok probably won't even let me post this video, but if this video gets posted, please save it and repost it everywhere you fucking can, because I'm telling y'all, they are covering this shit up. They are covering this shit up because they don't want to get out how bad it actually was. This was not good. This was the worst fucking thing that's happened probably in the past 8 years. That entire town is basically unlivable now because of the fucking chemicals. And they're lying, telling civilians that it's safe, knowing damn well, because I took chemistry and I know chemicals and I have this awesome fucking supercomputer in my hand. The side effects from breathing in those chemicals, they're covering shit up. They're covering shit up. They're covering shit up. But it's not surprising.
They're covering shit up. That's what that person says. I don't even want to assume the gender of that person. They say that it's a massive cover up, and they say that there's chemicals all over the water and stuff. But the EPA and the New York Times say it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But are animals dying? Yes. That person said they saw video. There is video of proof that fish are dying and some pets too. Pets, barnyard animals. So I'll play you some proof that animals are actually dying there and that it could be serious and it might have some like long-term, there may be some long-term concerns. Should we compare it to Chernobyl? I'll explain that. Chernobyl's doing okay. Could be worse than Chernobyl. That's what people should be saying. Because Chernobyl's not that bad. I'll show you that. We'll get into that part of the story. But here's a story about fish literally dying because of these chemicals that came out of Cal Play It.
At the area, well and groundwater are safe. However, after this couple saw dead fish in this creek that you're looking at, they're deciding to not take any chances.
Oh, there was hundreds.
Russell Murphy is referring to the fish now belly up in Leslie Run. He and his wife noticed them last night, barely 48 hours after the fiery derailment 5 miles away.
This is huge, huge environmental effects.
That's now one of many concerns the EPA now faces.
The impact of the fish, yes, there was a impact of those. However, the levels as we have seen it are protective to groundwater. We are aware there are some wells along that for residential wells.
Environmental cleanup crews were at.
You heard what the officials say, okay? The officials say that it's not as bad as that Zoomer thinks it is. The water, the soil, etc. You heard the guy with the vest. He's official. He said, oh, it's not that bad. You can see the water and you can see the dead fish. So I can confirm, I fact checked it. Fish died. Not only did fish die, chickens died. So I have evidence of that. Play you that from the local news, which may one day save the planet. Local news reporting that is somehow independent from what the mainstream news wants to do, which is in a lot of cases, cover things up, not point out things that corporations might be doing wrong. Remember, corporations, they do have power. People don't like to write bad things about them. Here's a story about actual chickens dying.
And even though North Lima is about 10 miles away from East Palestine, Amanda Brashear says when she went to let her dog out last night at about 10 o'clock, the smell made her eyes water. And she also believes it could be why her chickens are now dead.
So I walked up to the cage and this is what I found.
Amanda Brashears was going to feed her 5 hens and rooster this morning when she discovered them all lifeless, practically in the same position, with no signs of a predator entering their enclosure.
I'm beyond upset and quite panicked because they may be just chickens, but they're family.
Brashear.
Did the chickens attack her, do you think? Her face got messed up by something. I wonder, what if it made the chickens really, I don't want to speculate too much, but if it made the chickens go nuts first, like homicidal. So, but I saw them, okay, dead chickens, and there's a story about foxes too. So I have that story. Real things being affected, but they decided to burn off these chemicals, okay, because they didn't want to have a big explosion. That's what they're saying. They had to burn off these chemicals, including vinyl chloride. I can play to you about that. You want to see this thing about here's foxes dying?
First News has been hearing all of your calls about your animals suffering and getting sick, some even dying. And it's not just causing problems for the animals, it's also causing problems for their owners as well. Taylor Holzer and his family run Parker Dairy. It's just outside East Palestine's original evacuation zone. Taylor is an ODNR registered fox keeper. A couple of his foxes broke their legs trying to run after the initial derailment. One of his foxes even died.
Out of nowhere, he just started coughing really hard and just shut down, and he had liquid diarrhea and just went very fast.
Taylor tells me all of his foxes have been sick and acting different since the weekend. Some have abnormally puffy faces, including the one he's holding. He says they are not eating properly. Many are dealing with stomach issues and are acting lethargic.
This isn't how a fox should act. He's very weak, limp. His eyes are very watery and weepy.
Some of the foxes are pacing rapidly in their pen, another sign they are not well. Taylor says the train derailment is causing all of these issues.
Smoke and chemicals from the train, it's the only thing that could cause it because it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. The chemicals that we're being told are safe in the air, that's definitely not safe.
For the animals.
it's for animals or people.
Taylor hopes justice is served for the animals and people of East Palestine.
People's cats are getting sick and dying, and people's other birds that they have in their house that they weren't being able to evacuate either. Just, it's not safe.
All right, so you heard about the fox, and you saw the sad fox. He didn't look well, right? So that's all from chemicals that were burned up in the air. And you might have seen the videos. The guy showing the clouds, these chemicals, vinyl chloride. You want to hear about that? I have a little, there is a TikTok video talking about the effects of the chemicals. I can show that to you. It's vinyl chloride, and it could turn into acid rain. But New York Times said, like I said, EPA says, I'll show you. EPA says everything's cool. That's what the government, that's official. I'll play you some of this.
EPA in Ohio. Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contain vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastic that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form, meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million, average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad, because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio, are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. One, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
It's a cover up. He's saying they cover it up when we have accidents. Historically, there are accidents and they get covered up. But there are accidents sometimes that are really strange too, like the BP oil spill. Norfolk Southern, for their part in all of this, which may be creating an environmental disaster that lasts years, possibly, they've decided to pay out $25,000 to the whole town for creating this giant environmental catastrophe, allegedly. People are alleging on TikTok, I should say, that this is a giant environmental catastrophe. The EPA, I told you, the New York Times says, the EPA says it's not that bad. What does the EPA say? You know, the EPA also says that Roundup, glyphosate, the EPA says glyphosate is great, doesn't do anything, even though lots of lawsuits say otherwise. So does the EPA always get it right? The EPA in this case, according to the New York Times, on February 10th, the EPA said that about 20 rail cars were reported to have been carrying hazardous materials, chemicals including vinyl chloride, butyl acrylate, oh no, ethyl hexyl acrylate, and ethylene glycol monobutyl. That wasn't that bad. I got through those words. Ether were known to have been and continue to be released to the air, surface, soil, and surface waters, the EPA said. On February 12th, the EPA, after monitoring the air, said it has not detected contaminants at levels of concern in and around East Palestine, although residents might still smell something. They screened the air inside 210 homes and said they did not detect vinyl chloride and hydrogen chloride. They're still waiting to screen another 200 homes. The authorities did what they did to, they burned the stuff. That was what they called a controlled release of toxic materials, and that the contents were diverted to a trench and burned off. And they regarded that as a success because they didn't have a major, huge explosion, which is, I guess, what they were trying to avoid. But burned off a bunch of chemicals, right? So companies, and so far they paid $25,000 whole dollars to the town for their troubles. And there's a picture of it. It looks pretty bad. That it is a risk when you transport hazardous chemicals over rail. Sometimes things crash. It's just the way it goes. You have pipelines. Sometimes they burst. You have ships on the sea. Sometimes they wreck. Shit happens. It's unavoidable. But does it get covered up? Well, that's for you guys to figure out. I'll tell you, I'll give you the alternative viewpoint. The alternative viewpoint I just gave you is that it's a massive cover up, and it's going to be like everybody's going to die. Okay, that's the alternative opinion. The alternative opinion is similar to the mainstream opinion, but it comes from Gab. So I'll show you that in this case. So this guy on Gab, who's got pictures like he's there, says everything's cool. He wrote this post today. Is a Chernobyl-like disaster really happening in Ohio? Analysis. Only on the internet. God bless. He has a picture of himself driving around. And then another tweet that says, local residents say no animals are dying to their knowledge. And then this person has pictures like they're there. So I haven't spoken with this person. This is a random person on Gab. However, the other people I played you stuff from that people are taking officially, like that Zoomer with the blue hair, he's just a random person on TikTok. So as far as random people go, it's still worthwhile. I genuinely think it might not be that bad. Genuinely. On the other hand, the government loves to cover shit up, and corporations love to cover stuff up. Excuse my language. They do. So just want to make sure I gave you the news officially, unofficially, and every other way, both sides. So you know now what's happening in Ohio. Okay. So subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and hit the bell. And then you get all my videos. And then on my other videos, I'll ask you to donate money to buymeacoffee.com/lifttheveil to support the show, which you can still do. For now, that's what it is.